After the aborted Camp 1 and exactly a month later, give or take a couple of days, we were back again on our way to Shravate for camp number 2 to spend the night at the backwaters of the dam. This time we had a new member in Sunil who had missed Camp 1 just by a whisker. So the 5 of us and all our stuff packed into my small Maruti 800, we headed on our way back to the MTDC resort in Karla. We parked our car at the resort and started our foot march through the paddy fields towards the gentle eastern slope of the Ekvira hill. Midway to the top, we got a small trail and took that on our way to reach the top. After some time, we became aware that a tribal youngster was following us, but he was keeping a safe distance. After a while, we sat down in a shady part to rest for a bit and drink some water. I waved out to the tribal to come and join us for a bite and a sip. He was reluctant at first, but eventually he did come to us. It is amazing how these guys live wearing just a traditional underwear, which is known as a langot, and walking barefoot in such thorny areas. In broken Marathi, we asked him if there was any water around. He nodded affirmatively and immediately carried some of our empty bottles and filled them up from a nearby spring. Being a local, he knew the place like the back of his hand. We wouldn't have been able to find the spring even if we wanted to. After a while, it was time to move on. We thanked this guy, gave him $10 as a small token, and he accepted it thankfully and was off to wherever he was headed. We climbed to the top and headed towards the solitary barn to sit there for a while and have our lunch. After some time, maybe around 3 p.m., we moved northwards to the other side to begin our descent. The bushy rainforest was a problem, but this time we were able to slowly inch our way downhill. Since there were a lot of dried fallen leaves on the ground, a couple of us took a fall now and then. One thing of note, every time we stopped and looked downhill, the lake looked only 10-15 minutes away. But it took us almost 2 to 3 hours to get down to the spot that we had identified as fit for setting up camp. From the top, it looked like a nice flat spot, but the ground reality was that it was covered with about 4 feet tall dried grass. We had to cut some and burn some, but soon we had a good enough clearing for the 5 of us to sleep. A path passed right through campsite, and we were not sure why. It had never occurred to us that we should cook our own food at camp. So we were carrying packed food, and I don't remember what we had, but we had packed food. However, I do remember that we always used to drink Old Monk rum with water. Sleep on a camp is always a series of short naps for me, though some in our group can get into a deep slumber anywhere. The whole night I was kept awake by some shuffling noise nearby, and Parvez had put the thought of wildcats in the area in my mind. In the morning, however, I realized that the leaves that dry up and fall to the ground make this sound, and there was no wildcat around. In the morning, we were greeted by a couple of guards on their morning round of the periphery of the lake. They were surprised to see us and obviously could make out that we had spent the night there. We did a little bit of explaining about our crazy interests, and they were okay with it. They continued on their patrol. We packed up our stuff and walked the path from where these guys had come. This eventually led us to the dam and beyond. Memory fails me how we reached the MTDC resort back, but I do remember seeing some kind of tram tracks by the dam and walking on them. After the end of Camp 2, we headed back home, but the quest started to search for new locations to camp. And we spent the next couple of years camping at a rundown and broken tree deck overlooking the Tansa Lake and the Tansa Dam. It's a beautiful spot on a small jutting land bank which has water on 3 sides. The tree deck is completely hidden from view, either from the dam or from the road. We also discovered a waterfall called Randha near the Wilson Dam. Randha is the site of an ancient temple which has either collapsed or has been broken down. But a new temple has been built there by the locals. But more about these camps in later logs. On December 26, 1990, it struck me that I should write down all the events and anecdotes from camp life into a camp log in a written format. And by that time, we were on our 8th camp. So from camp 3 to camp 7, we were either at the tree deck or Randha. But from the 8th camp onwards, I have maintained a complete written record and pasted photographs wherever possible. More about that in later episodes of Camp Logs.